Today we're checking out the goriest, gnarliest D-Rex T-Rex battle face-off video I've ever freaking seen. Goji Center outdid themselves, dude. I almost threw up. This video is freaking insane, dude. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to Goji Center also, and let's get it going.
Distortus Rex, the abominable mutant whose origins and real purpose of creation is still shrouded in mystery. The monster that terrorized the lesser beings of St. Hubert, and one who could have treated the Jurassic fanbase with one more showdown. What if the latest Jurassic saga followed suit with a tradition the third outing established and gave us a colossal clash of carnivores? Today on Goji Center, we consider the build, abilities, and X factors to determine which Rex might have come out on top.
I mean, come on. I love the T-Rex as much as anybody else. I have a freaking giant T-Rex arm tattoo going down my hand, but the D-Rex is so much bigger. Mass moves mass. Weight classes exist for a reason. Plus, it's got that, like, extreme autistic rage thing going. I don't know.
At Jurassic World Rebirth capped off in a different way. In this special short and sweet edition of Monster Face-Off, we'll discuss what could have happened if the D-Rex and new T-Rex faced off at the end. The fight that never was will be displayed here in the battle arena.
See, I know the new T-Rex is also bigger, beefier than we're used to. It's like much stronger than we're used to. I get that, I do. But that goober couldn't even catch a small child. So I'm supposed to think it's some big bad apex hunter. People say it was full from eating another dinosaur, hence why it wasn't at the top of its game. But I mean, come on. When I'm full, I can still catch like stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I'm full. I go big, done full baby. Now can't catch stuff. It's like, what? What are we talking about?
As the cast drove off into the sunrise, leaving the nightmare of St. Hubert Island behind them, we were all thinking the same thing. Director Gareth Edwards and other filmmakers involved realized they had perhaps unwittingly broken tradition by not including a carnivore clash in the film's runtime. Some quilled faces getting murked by actual dragons with...
Dude, every time I see the scene of one of my favorite raptors getting eaten while one of my most hated characters in any franchise takes a piss right in my face, my blood pressure spikes a little bit. It's weird.
In hindsight, this change does have some precedent, as writer David Koepp was the author of the only two Jurassic films not to feature any such major rumbles. The crew did consider changing the ending to what Edwards and company jokingly called Deus Rex Machina by having the T-Rex come charging back in to fight the final boss of the adventure, the Distortus Rex. Ultimately, Edwards and the crew decided a calmer ending and breaking tradition was more fitting, and plenty can agree.
No one agrees with that. I'm sorry. No, maybe like 4 people. His mom and her 3 friends that she knits with agree.
T-Rex is still currently alive in this Jurassic timeline, but we still can't help but wonder. Against such a tower of terror, could even the new T-Rex, trumped up as possibly the most powerful yet in the franchise, have stood a chance? Would it win in a straight fight due to some unforeseen advantage?
Look at the size difference between these two things. I guarantee you the D-Rex could pick the T-Rex up and like overhead press it at least 5 times.
Or might the sheer size and power of the Chopper Chomper reign supreme all the same? Before continuing this episode of Monster Face-Off, we will take into account all the stats provided by official sources and evidence seen in the films. We'll make evaluations based on those stats and try to figure out who should have won, regardless of what rumors have said about who would have won. So, with that said, let's have a look. Section number 1, size. Right out the gate, however, these two combatants have a rather unique problem, namely how hard it is to tell how big they are actually supposed to be. The Jurassic franchise has never been the most consistent when it comes to the size of its dinosaurs, and Rebirth kept that tradition going stronger than ever. Both of the Rexes in the film, mutant or otherwise, were supposed to one-up what came before, and some individual shots in the movie make both of these two look positively gargantuan compared to the Rexes of yesteryear. The stats that are posted on the merchandise, however, those get a little bit confusing. Despite the stated intent that the Tyrant Lizard King featured in Rebirth would be bigger and beefier than Rexy, at 4.6 meters tall and 12.5 meters long, the Rex of Rebirth is indeed slightly longer and taller than most of the Tyrannosaurus in the first trilogy, but this is still shorter length and height-wise compared to Rexy at the end of her tenure in Dominion.
Are you kidding me? The thing's not even bigger than a Rexy? That's crazy, bro. What are we even excited about anymore?
400 kilograms, however, the two Tyrant reptiles have about the same weight. Part of the confusion for its size, however, is because the CGI model morphs in size several times across its scene. At one point, this Tyrannosaurus looks like it has a skull roughly the same size as the raft that could fit multiple people. If that was true, and scaling up for size accordingly, this terrible tyrant would wind up closer to 20 or more meters long.
Wow,
this
they
is
should have had that.
absolutely not what was intended, and is probably just the result of dramatic effect kicking in for the shots. The Distortus Rex, meanwhile, is not immune to this problem either. In several shots during the confrontation at the docks, or when the horrific hybrid infamously downed a helicopter.
I was gonna say, this dude's chewing on a helicopter. He's a kaiju in this scene. Like, you can shrink him down whatever you want, but it's not like a framing thing, like the T-Rex's head next to the raft. He is physically chewing on a helicopter. Oh, I hit my mic. He's gotta be big enough to do it, though.
It looked positively gargantuan. Gareth Edwards, having a long tenure of making kaiju and giant Star Wars walkers look huge on camera, certainly did it plenty of favors in leaving an impact. Not so much for keeping things consistent.
He probably sends his wife the funniest nudes where things look much bigger than this.
Official stats for the D-Rex aren't the easiest to come by, or the easiest to understand. Some official merchandise giving it a height of about 8.1 meters and a length of 14.5 meters does make sense, and even lines up pretty closely to what we predicted before the movie came out.
I can live with it.
However, is where it gets confusing. The same information card for the height and weight gives a bafflingly big range from 12.7 tons to upwards of nearly double that at 21.9 tons. This larger metric actually does make a lot of sense given the hybrid size, but some of the same cards very strangely imply the Spinosaurus in the film that are clearly smaller than the Rebirth Rex are almost the same weight.
44,000 pound Spinosauruses?
Additionally, sources from both the tie-in merch and Universal's release documents typically give the Distortus an oddly light weight of 9 to 11 tons. This isn't just light, it also strangely contradicts numerous notes that this distorted king is supposed to be at least twice the weight of a typical Tyrannosaurus. See what we mean when we say the Jurassic franchise's sizes can be confusing? Mixing and matching how big these two look in different scenes could make the comparison either surprisingly close or very lopsided.
I feel like it's just different marketing teams not communicating, everyone going off different stuff. It's how hard is it to just sit all the employees down in one room or one Skype call? I don't know what people use these days anymore, bro. Get everyone to get one freaking group text. Okay, this is how much it weighs, and we all just go with that. It's like so unprofessional. For these franchises get so big and bloated, they can't even communicate within their own departments, and you just get nonsense like this.
So, for the sake of fairness, we're going to use the higher estimates for the T-Rex and a midpoint for the Distortus's weight. This gives us an 8.4-ton Tyrant Lizard King versus a 17.3-ton Distorted King.
Good God.
Which fittingly lines up pretty well with the often quoted twice as big as T-Rex remark. With all of that factored, the winner in this category is very obvious. The Tyrannosaurus finds itself in
It's like Conor McGregor versus a really buff 3-year-old. You know what I mean?
a rare situation for it, as the David in this David and Goliath battle against the malicious Malformity Edge D-Rex. Section number 2, overall strength.
Yeah, the D-Rex for sure. Mass moves mass.
In some contests is because having a massive amount of weight also means you're constantly moving a massive amount of weight. Tyrannosaurus, both in real life and fiction, have shown off astounding strength. Rexy, despite being emaciated, out of shape, and never fighting another big carnivore in her life before, managed to shove around the Indominus and later held her own against a larger Giganotosaurus.
Which is crazy because the Rexy couldn't even catch like a woman in a Claire in high heels, but could take on the. You know what? Everything's just silly forever.
After getting her strength back, Big Edie also went blow for blow with the gigantic Asset 87, despite a small size difference.
That's
the
pretty
Rebirth
awesome.
T-Rex should be capable of similar performance, when this lazy fella is motivated, of course. The Distortus Rex, however, is a bit of a unique case, as we have yet to see it battle anything outside of mobile game tie-ins and Evolution 2 mods. Shameless plug here, those D-Rex Jurassic World Evolution mod videos you see on YouTube. Wanna take a wild guess who made that mod? Links
That's
down
funny.
below. D-Rex did manhandle things like the car Krebs tried to flee in, and downed the rescue helicopter with no issues. Granted, these two showings are against substantially lighter objects than itself. The rescue chopper appears to be a model similar to a typical Eurocopter AS-365 Dolphin, which usually weighs just under 2.5 tons. The Distortus likely grabbed the chopper from below and twisted it sideways based on what we see the spotlight do in the film. The sudden jerk caused the rotors to fly off, given we don't hear the blades smack against it. This means with one arm, it managed to overcome the lift force of the chopper and the chopper's own weight before biting into it.
That's such a good point.
It is fair to assume that given the Distortus wasn't at all winded by this, lobbing a few tons worth of projectiles is not anywhere near its peak of strength. This is likely considering how much weight it is hauling around and having to balance with such a tall frame as well. With two gigantic arms capable of grappling like an ape, the Distortus likely could smack, pummel, and crush smaller dinosaurs, and likely had done so for years to get its meals after scarfing down Snickers Man. Could it lift up the T-Rex? Perhaps, but its tall stance and how much its foe could be thrashing about might make it awkward to try, even if it could lift up 8 tons with a single arm.
That's exactly what I said before, the shoulder pressing.
Such a feat might require both arms, and putting all that misbalanced weight on just its legs might be a bit too much for it. Still, sheer size does mean more muscle to heft with, and more mass to absorb force when wrestling and battling an opponent.
I feel like the T-Rex is going to have better bite force, but the D-Rex, obviously those mandibles, those giant arms are going to play a huge factor. There's no way the T-Rex comes out on top of this.
Goes to the deformed king. Section 3, Maneuverability.
Okay, alright, maybe the T-Rex gets this one.
Wasn't breaking any land speed records when it went after the Delgado family. However, its lack of success might be more down to lack of trying than actual lack of speed. Chances are part of the reason it decided to go on the hunt was just as much out of boredom and instincts kicking up seeing a loud screaming object moving away from it as it was any hunger. In all likelihood, this Rex is comfortably quick when it needs to be on land or in the water.
You know what? I could live with that. It was just kind of bored going after him, because why not? Like an interesting little mental stimulation passing by him. I could live with that. I could get on board with that. Okay, maybe this T-Rex isn't such a piece of crap.
If there is anything that did hinder the cruelly created colossus that was the Distortus, it was speed. We don't really see the D-Rex ever having a particular need to start booking it, but looking at its build doesn't really imply anything particularly swift. Its extremely tall stance, skinny limbs, and malformed body would make picking up speed awkward. Agility is another factor.
It looks like it'll die if he goes too fast.
Is an aspect of movement that does exactly what it sounds like. While having more limbs on the ground does make the D-Rex more stable than a biped of the same mass and height might be, it does mean its center of gravity would be located in between the forward and hind limbs touching the ground. Turning around means moving twice as many limbs with a much larger radius to rotate and change direction. If the fight ends up in the water, like at the end of the movie, it's also likely that the Distortus would struggle. Long and skinny limbs are some of the worst combinations for trying to swim with, and the Distortus would likely be restricted to just wading in the waters.
Ironically though, that's like warm tropical water, which is like typically good for inflammation, which is what this crazy arthritis-ridden abomination most likely has. There's a chance that warm tropical water will aid it in combat a little bit, but only a little bit.
This ambush. Even with the weight disadvantage, the Tyrannosaurus might be able to bowl over the larger Rex by charging into its legs to knock the foundation out from under it. For this category, we find that the basic theropod shape reigns superior.
Okay, the T-Rex obviously got it, but that difference right there, oh my god. 83% to 35%, like, come on. That's fair for sure, but with, like, size and the other things, the difference was not that great, whereas the D-Rex is much bigger. I don't know.
Theropod shape
I'm sensing favoritism.
Edge T-Rex. Section number 4, Bite Effectiveness.
Gotta give that to the Rex.
Distortus, meanwhile, leaves a very big impression when it, well, literally left an impression on that helicopter with its teeth.
I was gonna say, actually, that thing effortlessly gnawed down a helicopter.
Now, ignoring the fact it grew about 5 times its size for that shot, thanks Gareth, biting into a helicopter is still an impressive display of strength. The bite of 25 was mostly focused on the cockpit and aluminum body of the chopper. The T-Rex didn't completely crunch through any of the sturdier ribbing and reinforcements, but punching its teeth through the aluminum and cockpit is still impressive. The T-Rex might have had other contributors in the mix affecting its jaws, but Tyrannosaurus does appear to be the lion's share of whatever we're seeing here. Compared to a normal Tyrannosaurus jaw, the distorted king does appear to have some deformities resembling brachycephalic animals. This is where the facial bones aren't allowed to grow to the extent they were supposed to, and usually result in snub noses and bent jaws. Pugs and the fellow hybrid, the Scorpius rex, have a similar condition. This doesn't necessarily mean the jaws are weak, just that they might not be working as optimally as a Tyrannosaurus of equal size would. Applying information from real-life
Of
studies
equal
about
size.
theropod jaws, such as Dr. Manabu Sakamoto's 2022 study on theropod bite mechanics, we can make an estimate on what kind of chomp we're looking at here using our model. Scaling up from other known tyrannosaurs with the formulas provided, we get a potential chomping force between about 72,000 to 92,000 newtons. Admittedly, this is not an exact estimate. Movie physics and exact size scaling aside, the actual force could wind up being much lower than this because of the deformities in the jaw. Ignoring how the D-Rex suddenly grew into a kaiju to fit the helicopter into its mouth, even just a portion of this force would be more than enough to punch through the aluminum and glass without severely damaging the sturdier parts of the chopper. The Tyrannosaurs in the Jurassic franchise may not always have quite as crushing of a bite as they should, but they are still quite powerful all the same, and usually are given a ballpark range across various statements matching up to the real thing. So, a real-life T-Rex with all of the bells and whistles should be biting more effectively. But the movie versions aren't necessarily a slouch, and the rebirth Tyrannosaurus does have a head and teeth more in line with the real thing than prior movie versions. Scaled to the stated metrics, it has a head similar in size to some studied specimens. This means a crunching force somewhere in the 40,000 to 55,000 Newton range, accounting for some differences in jaw structure and playing it safe. Could be higher if we assume similar mechanical advantages. So, the Distorted King likely has a heftier crush even with a suboptimal jaw.
I was gonna say, I totally forgot to take into account the size differences. I was stupid. I was just like, oh yeah, nothing beats T-Rex jaw, but they're absolutely right, for sure.
But the Tyrant King is not far behind, and would be more easily able to land multiple bites thanks to its frame. In the biting department, one can probably crunch harder, but the other can chomp down more easily and quickly. That means equal damage. For this category, we'll leave it as a draw for both
Political.
Section number 5, Auxiliary Weapons. While the rebirth Tyrannosaurus never showed any
Who's got
particular
arms?
need to move quickly outside of an accidental disappearing act, there's little reason to think it can't. Extra mass might slow it down compared to someone like Rexy back in 1993, but even moving at a slower pace, it still has a very robust head that would be perfect for bludgeoning and crushing. The Buck, Bull, and Big Edie have all shown that Tyrannosaurs in this franchise are not adverse to using their heads as battering rams or bludgeons. A full body charge with enough speed behind it focused on that big brow at the top of its
Wow.
head could easily produce kinetic energy exceeding 300 to 400 kilojoules. How much impact force is behind that would depend on a lot of factors, but those are similar numbers to a 35-mile-per-hour pickup truck crash when not accounting for the crumple zones. The Distortus, meanwhile, doesn't really have the speed or the striking capability to use its head like that. It might not even want to, given how soft the top of its skull seems to be. Instead, its best asset in the fight, probably
Oh
even
my
more
God,
so than
bro.
its head, would be its arms. Whatever is in the mix with this horrendous hybrid mutant gives it plenty of dexterity. In the fight, the Distorted King would swat, smack, and crush with potentially disastrous amounts of force. If the Tyrannosaurus got pinned to the ground and smashed from above, so all that force is pressed against the hard ground, that might be curtains for the Tyrant Lizard King. These same arms did also casually throw a roughly 2-ton helicopter after all. Whether they could actually pick up the Tyrannosaurus remains to be seen. In this specific fight, it might not even have to. Given how tall the
I think it would
Distortus
just
is
go like-
and how it seems to need to move carefully to avoid toppling, something supported by the universal documents, lifting about half its own body weight with just one arm might not be feasible.
I was watching 28 Years Later last night. Anyone who's seen it, you know, the alpha, what he does when he gets a hold of a human's head, that's exactly what this thing could do to that freaking parasaur, and it'd be crazy.
Using both arms might get the job done, but that would leave it with a substantially less stable stance. This doesn't appear to be something that would be throwing itself around and swinging about like Tarzan. Grappling could be done to try and seize hold of the Tyrannosaurus, but swinging or hefting its opponents might be outside the wheelhouse, and not used in favor of pummeling and smashing. The Tyrannosaurus's charge does give it a potentially critical opening attack to knock the Distortus off balance, however, it would need space and an opening to wind up for the best effect.
I hope we're not taking reach for granted in this. Reach, being able to reach that T-Rex well before he gets in, just like grab his head and guide it to the ground when he's charging at you, and then you just get to do whatever. I paused it right as the freaking percentages is going up, and then there's gonna be like an X factor. There's always an X factor, but like this is such an intense moment.
Thanks to its great reach,
okay,
and
yeah, that makes sense.
To follow up, the deformed king takes this advantage. Section 6, X Factors.
I love the X Factor.
The senses of Tyrannosaurus, both in real life and in the franchise, have already been covered extensively before. The Lost World established the replicated tyrants still have their superb sense of smell. Other outings in the franchise can vouch for a good sense of hearing and night vision. What's going on with the motion-based vision is a matter of debate, but most of the films seem to indicate at the very least the replicated Tyrannosaurus from the original 90s batch more easily track moving objects than stationary ones. It remains to be seen or confirmed if this newer model suffered the same issues or not, but it likely has decent enough vision all the same.
My headcanon is it was just like earlier T-Rexes, like it was like some kind of defect in their genome, like poor vision, like, but they kind of perfected it later on. It's not canon whatsoever, but that's what I like to believe.
It's also noteworthy that this T-Rex is extremely stealthy when it wants to be, being quieter in movement and vocalizing.
A little too stealthy though, bro. The leaves weren't even crushed in. This kind of feels cheap to use this, and it could disappear in half a second, like, but it only can because that was silly though.
Than prior Tyrannosaurus. The Distortus Rex, however, is quite mysterious on what's going on under the hood. For example, that noticeably bulbous forehead it has could be from having a species like a beluga added into the mixture. These and other dolphins actually have fairly gnarly looking skulls that bear more than a passing resemblance to crocodiles when you look at just the bones. The round protrusion that smooths out the head is largely made up by an organ called a melon. Made of specialized fats and wax, this organ helps to focus echolocation into specific directions. So, does the Distortus have this and it has another means of navigating the dark? Impossible to tell, really.
Ooh.
This exact same shape could also be due to errors in embryonic development. Hydrocephaly is a condition where cerebrospinal fluids build up in the brain case. This can put pressure on the brain, damaging parts and causing the head to abnormally swell, expanding the skull or leaving soft, squishy lobes outside of the skull.
I just assumed like his parents were cousins or something, you know what I mean?
So we're left with a bit of a question. Either the D-Rex looks this way because it is a hybrid and might have some special abilities, or it looks the way it does because it's deformed. We stress that there really is no concrete answer on this one yet film-wise. To give our best guess, we can look at the traits involved as well as what the creature does in the movie. If the Distortus has echolocation, it doesn't really seem to be showing it, given how easily it lost track of Duncan when he was right in front of it at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Known symptoms for hydrocephalic individuals, meanwhile, include distorted voices, changes in reasoning, irritability, poor temper control, slowed movement, and decreased coordination. Those all don't sound a lot like what we see more than any whale-based superpower. Universal easily could change this with more information, but for now, the D-Rex's distinctive look seems to be more a factor of distortion than any intentional hybrid design. This X Factor did discuss a lot of what we would cover in the senses category, so for this potentially critical edge in ambushing at night, the Tyrannosaurus takes another point.
What about another situation where the D-Rex would come out on top? Are we only gonna do the one situation where a T-Rex would come out on top?
With all our stats in play, let's take a quick look at how this fight could go.
It's gonna be a night ambush, isn't it? It'll be a fair environment in an environment where I guess it's just like the end of the movie. Like, this is how the end battle would have gone down. Yeah, Johnny, you idiot. That's obviously why it's doing this. I forgot. Man, this would have been sweet. That T-Rex is, well, I guess it's not even taller than Rexy, though. Whoa! How'd you butterfingers that one up so terribly? Oh, damn, never mind. That worked out pretty good. I don't know if that was worth it for the T-Rex. Ooh, I didn't even think about that. He could totally jab his fingers in there. this is horrific, bro. Oh my god. They're making it gnarlier than I even pictured. Damn. Just stay down, buddy. Oh my god. This is so messed up, bro. Oh god.
This fight is actually very situational.
I can't believe I thought they'd be one-sided and tilt towards the T-Rex. This is a snuff film, for God's sakes.
Front brawl where both of them can see each other and there are no obstacles, the Distortus would probably come out on top, thanks to leveraging its greater weight and strength, having little trouble grabbing onto the Tyrannosaurus and slamming it to the ground repeatedly with one arm whilst wailing on it with the other. It would soften up and badly wound the T-Rex before finishing it off with a bite to the throat or trampling it. However, the circumstances of the fight in the movie might tilt the odds.
Yeah, after that, I want to see the T-Rex win. That was terrible, bro. Oh my god.
This T-Rex seems to be very adept in the water and likes to hang around rivers. It is likely the fight would involve the T-Rex ambushing the D-Rex in the water and taking it by surprise. Since the D-Rex would be wading into the river, that means the T-Rex would likely go for the legs and get the first strike. It might not be enough to drop the D-Rex, but it could cut into the foundations and slow the already less nimble behemoth down. From there, if the D-Rex could grab a hold of the T-Rex and fight back, it might get some momentum. But fighting at night and in all that water and darkness could make keeping hold and pummeling the T-Rex difficult. A direct bite would be devastating, but getting close might also put the D-Rex at risk of a crunch to its own face and
this is why it needed to be the 4 Spinosauruses, man, not the lone T-Rex.
rupturing the soft dome of its noggin. This is where the humans might have intervened to help further tilt the odds. Well-executed flares might distract the D-Rex
Duncan would have helped.
momentarily and give the T-Rex another opening. Alternatively, if the T-Rex got back in the water, it might be able to escape notice and come back for another surprise attack aimed at a more critical spot like the face or neck.
You know what? This happening and then the 4 Spinos and the Mosin rolling up and eating both of them would have been the craziest crap I've ever seen in my life.
Now, it was rumored that the T-Rex was actually supposed to win this fight. Quite frankly, we think that this happening, that being T-Rex pulling off this win, would be quite difficult in a fair and square fight in neutral terrain. If the T-Rex does manage to win, it would have been depending on outside factors such as leveraging terrain, humans playing a major role in distracting the T-Rex, and the T-Rex leveraging this distraction to then kill the Distortus Rex. And where did we see this happen before? Thankfully, D-Rex is still wandering about the cursed jungles of St. Hubert, and time will tell if we ever get to see this mutant throw down against an equal challenger.
Damn, bro. A lot to ponder. A lot to think about after that. Got me all thinking and stuff. Although not really, because it would have beat the crap out of the T-Rex, although that water scenario would have been pretty sweet. This is a great video. I questioned a few things going into it, but in the end, I was very entertained, informed. I feel like a better man now. This was a freaking great video. I agree with all of it, but let me know if you guys have any concerns or complaints down below. I said some pretty controversial things, so I imagine there's going to be 1 or 2. But yes, leave a like on the video, subscribe for more, subscribe to Goji Center, obviously, and I'll see you next time.